Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. We just passed 260 subs. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart, and I hope I can continue to make great content you guys will enjoy in the future. Now, the Military Bowl is between the UCF Knights and the Duke Blue Devils. Who do I think is going to win this bowl game? Let's break it down. Now, UCF is 9-4 and 6-2 in the American Conference this season, and Gus Malzahn, the former Auburn coach, he's done a really good job of keeping UCF as one of the top American Conference programs, following in the footsteps of Scott Frost and Josh Heupel, and they went 9-4 last year, and they stayed the same this year. And in week 1, they beat South Carolina State 56-10, and that was a good win. Then they lost to Louisville at home 20-14. That was a tough loss. Then they won at Florida Atlantic 40-14. That was a good win. Then they beat Georgia Tech 27-10, and that was a good win. That was the game that got Jeff Collins fired. Then they beat SMU 41-19. Then they beat Temple in an offensive explosion 70-13. Then they lost at ECU 34-13. That was a tough loss. Then they beat Cincinnati 25-21 at home. That was a good win. Then they won at Memphis 35-28. That was a good one as well. Then they won at Tulane 38-31. They beat the eventual conference champion. That was a great win. Then they lost to Navy at home 17-14. That was a tough loss. Then they won at South Florida 46-39. Then they lost at Tulane the second time in the conference championship game 45-28. That was a tough loss, but they still had a really solid season at 9-4. And quarterback John Rice Plumlee, he was 197 and 312 for 2,404 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and 145 rushing attempts for 841 yards and 11 touchdowns. And he's a fantastic dual threat quarterback. He's the transfer quarterback from Ole Miss, and he's been banged up this season. Quarterback Mikey Keene had to play some for him, but he's in the transfer portal, so if John Rice Plumlee gets hurt in this bowl game, that will be very tough for UCF to overcome. But when healthy, he's been a fantastic quarterback, and he's helped UCF win a lot of games this year on the ground and through the air. He's just a very solid quarterback overall. And running back R.J. Harvey is 112 rushing attempts for 767 yards and 5 touchdowns and 19 receptions for 190 yards. He's more of the speedster back for UCF. He's really quick and elusive. And running back Isaiah Bowser with 194 rushing attempts for 760 yards, 14 touchdowns, 14 receptions for 185 yards. He's more of the bruising running back. For UCF, he's the Northwestern transfer, and UCF has two solid running backs. They're both very different, but they definitely help UCF's rushing attack. And wide receiver Javon Baker has 54 receptions for 747 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's going to have to step up for UCF with wide receiver Ryan O'Keefe in the transfer portal. And on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Jason Johnson is 122 total tackles, 66 solo tackles, 1.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. Defensive lineman Trayon Morris Brash is 53 total tackles, 30 solo tackles, 6 sacks, a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. And defensive back Kobe Perry's 46 total tackles and 29 solo tackles. UCF's defense has been pretty solid this season. They are going to miss linebacker Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste. He's in the transfer portal. Besides him, every single player on UCF's defense that has played a lot of snaps will be playing in this game, and UCF has had a solid defense overall. But I would say that UCF's offense has been a bit better than their defense this season. And on the Duke side, they're 8-4 and 5-3 in the ACC this season. And Mike Elko's in his first season as the Duke head coach, taking over for the retired David Cutcliffe, and he's done a fantastic job at the Duke Blue Devils, turning them around from 3-9 last year to 8-4 this year. They've had a fantastic season. Yes, the ACC was down this year, but Duke has definitely overperformed expectations for what people thought they were going to do this season. And in week 1, they beat Temple 30-0, and that was a good win. Then they won at Northwestern 31-23. That was a good win, even though Northwestern had a bad season. Then they beat North Carolina A&T 49-20. That was a good win. Then they lost at Kansas 35-27. That was a tough loss. Kansas definitely improved this year. Then they beat Virginia 38-17. Then they lost at Georgia Tech 23-20 in overtime. That was a tough loss. Then they lost to the rivals North Carolina 38-35 at home. That was a tough loss. Then they bounced back and won at Miami 45-21. That was a good win, even though Miami had a bad season. Then they won at Boston College 38-31. Then they beat Virginia Tech at home 24-7. Then they lost at Pittsburgh 28-26. That was a tough loss. Then they beat Wake Forest in the final game of the regular season 34-31. To finish the season 8-4, and they had a great season overall for Duke standards. And quarterback Riley Leonard was a big reason for that. He was 231 for 363 for 2,794 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 114 attempts on the ground for 636 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. He's a very solid quarterback. He's a dual threat just like UCF's quarterback John Rice Plumlee. He's really solid through the air. He doesn't throw too many interceptions. He's a very good runner on the ground, and he's definitely helped Duke's offense improve this year. Running back Jordan Waters is 120 attempts for 561 251 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 16 receptions for 106 yards. He's a pretty solid running back for Duke, and he's definitely helped the running game out this year. And wide receiver Jalen Calhoun has 56 receptions for 811 yards and 4 touchdowns. And wide receiver Jordan Moore has 57 receptions for 643 yards and 5 touchdowns. And Duke has 2 good receivers for Riley Leonard to throw to. And on the defense side of the ball, linebacker Shaka Hayward has 93 total tackles, 48 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries. And defensive back Darius Joyner's 89 total tackles, 57 solo tackles, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Duke's defense has been solid all season. Even though the ACC has had a lot of down offenses this year, they've still done a really good job on defense. But I would say Duke's offense is barely better than their defense. So who do I think is going to win the Military Bowl? UCF is just a solid program. Gus Malzahn has continued to have UCF as one of the best American Conference programs, and they're just a very consistent team. They have a solid offense. Quarterback John Rice Plumlee, he's a dual threat quarterback. He does things through the air and on the ground. They have a great rushing attack with 2 solid running backs, and their defense has been pretty solid all season in the American Conference. And Duke's been the surprise team. Last year they had a bad season at the end of David Cutcliffe's tenure, and Mike Elko has come around, and he's turned Duke and made them a much better program than they used to be. Quarterback Riley Leonard is just like John Rice Plumlee. He's good through the air and on the ground. They have a solid rushing attack, and their defense has been much improved this year, even though they were playing against a lot of ACC offenses that definitely struggled this season. But I think that UCF still has a bit more talent overall on both sides of the ball. I think Gus Malzahn is the more experienced coach. He's been in these situations before in these bowl games, and even though they have a few players that are in the transfer portal, outside of Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste and Ryan O'Keefe, they're not super significant players, and as long as John Rice Plumlee can stay healthy in this bowl game, I think he still has enough weapons to throw to, and they have both running backs that are still playing in this bowl game, and their defense will play really well. I'm going to go with UCF to beat Duke 31-28 in the Military Bowl. I think Duke can win this bowl game. They want to win this game. All of their players are playing in this bowl game. Duke has not been in a bowl game in many years. They're going to want to win this game. They're going to play hard. Mike Elko is going to have his team ready to play. Riley Leonard's had a great season at quarterback. He's not turned the ball over too much. I think he's going to play well. I think the run game is going to be able to get things going on UCF's defense. Both UCF and Duke's defenses are both about the same. I think that they're both solid, but neither defense is really better than the other. And I think Duke is a really solid team, and I think they're going to be ready to play in this bowl game. But Duke has played against a lot of teams in the ACC that have been really down this year, and they were able to win, and that's all that matters. And I'm not taking anything away from what Duke's done this year. They've had a great season, but they have beaten a lot of bad teams in the ACC. The Wake Forest one at the end of the season was really solid, though. And UCF, they've had a great season as well. They've had a couple of bad performances. The Louisville loss wasn't very good, and neither was the Navy loss. But outside of that, they've had a great season overall. And quarterback John Rice Plumlee, he's going to really want to win this bowl game as well. As long as he stays healthy, I think they've got a really good chance to win. I think this game could go either way. I think that both teams' defenses are about even. I think that UCF's offense is just a little bit better than Duke's offense, and that might be the difference at the end of the day. And I'm going to go with UCF to beat Duke 31-28 in the Military Bowl. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below whether you think UCF or Duke's going to win this bowl game and why, and I will see you next time.